Well, good morning. I wanted to come to you this morning and talk about some things that I think are kind of necessary because of the last few days I've been talking to people who really have been getting quite discouraged with just the way things are going in the world and just with their own life and whatever. And some, as we've discussed it with various people, the concern is that we might be going into more variants of the virus and lockdowns and stuff like that as we go into the fall. And so I just feel like it's a time to be encouraged. And the scripture makes it really clear about some of the ways that we can actually encourage ourselves in the Lord. And I like to just talk a little bit about that because one of the things that God has given us the ability to do is to remember. We can remember the good things and we can also remember the bad things. And this is the thing that I wanted to speak just a little bit about this morning to give you some encouragement, perhaps, and to try to remind you of some of the things that you should remember and also to actually implement into your life today, regardless of what's going on around you. Because, like I said, there are a lot of things clamoring for our attention, and there's a lot of uncertainties going on in the world right now. But it's the Lord is one thing I appreciate. Have always appreciated about the Lord is that His word never changes. It's always the same, and I just so appreciate that. So I'm going to pull a couple of verses out of Psalms 77, and I'm also going to slip over to the book of Deuteronomy, which is a favorite book of mine as well, and just bring out a couple of verses of scripture this morning for a few moments and try to encourage you because, you know, we do need to have the courage to stand up with all the things that are happening and are clamoring. We need to stand up in faith, be strong in the spirit, knowing that we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but we wrestle against principalities and powers. And so in order for us to be effective in that, we need to know where we stand and we need to know to whom we can call. And so I'm going to look over in Psalm 77 here for just a verse or two. I'm going to pick it up in verse 11 of Psalm 77. It says, I will remember the works of the Lord. He says, and surely I will remember your wonders of old. I will also meditate on all your work and talk of your deeds. Your way, O God, is in the sanctuary. Who is so great a God as our God? You are the God who does wonders. You have declared your strength among the peoples. You have with your arm redeemed your people, the sons of Jacob and Joseph. Excuse me. And so these are great encouraging verses here where he says, no, I'll remember your wonders of old. Now I'm going to go over to the book of Deuteronomy in a moment here on the 8th chapter, and also on something that the Lord speaks about there that we're supposed to remember. But he says, I'm going to remember the works of the Lord. I'm going to remember the wonders of old, and in doing so, I will meditate in all your work and talk of your deeds. This to me is one of the greatest encouragements and the greatest avenues on which we can be strengthened in our spirit. We can be prepared for a day. We can be prepared for what the future holds. Is not only do we remember what the Lord has done for us, but we remember the wonderful things He's done when He brought us out of darkness, when He brought us out of sin, and set us out of the miry clay, as the Scripture says, and set us on a rock. But we also then need to talk about them. We need to encourage one another with the good things that the Lord has done, because He certainly has done some good things in each of our lives. If you're breathing today, if you are somewhat healthy, if you know the Lord, then He's done some wonderful things for you. And so we have a lot to be thankful. But what we need to do is we need to be talking to one another, encourage each other. Even encourage strangers sometimes. Do you know when you give somebody just a greeting, greet you in the name of the Lord? It's the day the Lord has made. It's so important for us to not only remember the things, but as he says here, says, I'm going to remember and I'll talk of your deeds. Your way is great. Our God is a great God. And we need to acknowledge that. We need to talk about that more. I think one of the things that this last year has done is it caused people to become more isolated and insulated, even with without having the opportunities to really be talking with other people as much, or being joined together with others, perhaps in fellowship or in worship or whatever. So we need to make the opportunities to encourage each other and to remind one another of the good things the Lord has done. What he says over here in the book of in the book of Deuteronomy, I'm going to pick it up in verse 2 of chapter 8, Deuteronomy. And here's what he says: "You shall remember that the Lord your God led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you, to test you, to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or no." King James says it just a little bit different. It says, remember all the ways which the Lord your God has led you. Now, when he says to remember all the ways which the Lord led Israel out of Egypt, he didn't tell them, remember all the times you failed. He didn't say, remember all the times you had a stiff neck and I had to discipline you as a result of that. He didn't say to remember all the ways where they had murmured and complained and one thing and another. No, what he said was, remember how the Lord led you. With an Egyptian army behind them, a Red Sea in front of them, the Lord opened up the Red Sea so that they could cross over on dry land. Remember that. Remember all the ways which the Lord your God has led you. And he's done that. We are so prone to remember that where we have failed. We're so prone to remember just that where we messed up or did whatever. But that's not what God says. He says, remember how I have led you. And I'm sure that every one of us can look back in our lives and we can remember things and how the Lord led us. Perhaps it was through a relationship that he healed. Perhaps it's through an illness that we prayed for and he just brought us forth in freedom and released us from that. Or any number of things. And the greatest one, of course, is to remember how he brought us out of the slavery to sin. If you don't remember anything else that God has done for you as a believer, remember how he has brought you out of from the slavery of sin. And he provided for you a way to move forward, to know him, to grow in the Lord. And he says he brought Israel out to humble them, or to bring them to the place where he realized that their deliverance was not based upon their strength alone, but was on his grace and his goodness. And he says to test you, to test us. God likes to test us, to just, not because he wants to try to catch us in a fault or some kind of a slip up. He tests us to see whether or not we're really going to love him. And I believe today, in the uncertain times in which we live, there could very well be some very, very significant tests ahead of us. Marty and I just watched a couple of days ago, watched the movie Paul, the Apostle of Christ. And boy, to see what those early Christians went through and how they depicted that in the film. And we looked at each other and says, God, give us the grace to stand in times of whatever testing. We, especially in North America, we've had so little testing. We've had so little adversity to our faith. We become very soft in our underbelly. We have become very soft in our commitment to Christ. And I think it's going to take some testing. It's going to take some challenges. But when those challenges come to you, when they come to me, when they come to us, regardless what they look like, remember how the Lord led you up to this point. Don't remember your failures. Don't remember what you could have done. Don't remember what you should have done. Remember how the Lord led you, how the Lord brought you forth, how he brought you out of darkness and brought you into light. And so he says, you shall remember that the Lord your God led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you, to test you, to know what was in your heart, whether you'd keep his commandments or no. I've known the Lord for over 50 years. And when I look back over my life, I made a lot of mistakes. A lot of things I could have done better. But as I look back on those things, I am reminding myself this morning that I don't need to remember all the mistakes I made or the things that were not right, the disappointments we had or whatever. But what I need to remember, and this is why I'm encouraging myself, just as I'm also attempting to encourage you, remember how the Lord led you. Remember his love for you. Remember what he did for you when you had that problem, that issue, and you prayed, and suddenly there was an answer for you. And not only should you remember what the Lord has done, declare what he's done. Share with others, declare with them. So those are my thoughts today that I wanted to leave with you and encourage you. Hopefully, it'll be a blessing to you. Um, if this little short exhortation has been a blessing, to just hit the like button and give me a comment back or whatever. Those are always encouraging me. So until next time, I pray you have a blessed day. Thank you for watching. I'm going to now sign off and talk to you again.